Hare Krishna, welcome to the Bliss Podcast. Sorry about that interesting opening intro music. I had to take that off of the off of YouTube because I don't have access right now to all the sound library where we usually get all our different intro tracks. So you'll have to bear with me for this impromptu intro music. I'm your host, Maitreya Rishi Dasa. I'm not here today with Purajit Prabhu, the founder of the Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society. He's currently busy working on some important projects, like the biography of Srila Prabhupada, which is coming up in the near future, and other ebooks which are currently out, which you can find on our website, expandthebliss.com. Many nice ebooks there compiled by Purajit Prabhu, Proof of the Vedas, History of Atheism, etc., etc. You can also find many nice articles written by the Bliss devotees. So be sure to check that out. All the links will be in the description of this podcast. Today, though, I'm joined by a special guest, His Grace, Bhaktanes Prabhu. How are you? Bhaktanes Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Nice to be here.
Accept mine, please. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
So Bhaktanes Prabhu is joining us from Slovenia, so we're very fortunate to have his association today to talk about Krishna consciousness. It's going to be very exciting. This is the first time we've had a guest, aside from ourselves, me and Purajit Prabhu. We were actually asked by one of our top fans, Mr. Peter Kirchner. I think I'm actually not pronouncing this. We've been pronouncing this incorrectly, but I'm not so fluent in Slovakian. So I don't have the exact, linguistics down, how to pronounce your name, dear Peter Kirchner Prabhu. But anyway, I'm sure Mike and Prabhu will teach me later how to say your name nicely. He asked us, why don't we get someone with a different perspective on the podcast? And of course, there is no such thing as a different perspective because we talk about the absolute truth here on this podcast. So there can't be any different perspective because everything is contained within the absolute perspective. But I kind of see where he was going with that. So anyway, we have Bhaktanes Prabhu for some different angles of vision, and it sounds very exciting. So let's dive right into the subject matter of today. We're going to be discussing the chanting of the holy name, the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the foundation of the Hare Krishna movement, as the name of the movement would suggest. This is not an ordinary movement. It is not a ordinary philanthropic movement. It is not a sentimental movement. It is a spiritual movement. So, as Srila Prabhupada says in one interview, it can be a little difficult to understand because it's on the spiritual platform. We often are criticized, Hare Krishnas are criticized for just what appears to be slacking off, chanting, dancing, being ecstatic, and taking delicious prasadam. It seems like kind of escapism almost. But that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada means by this is a little difficult to understand this movement because it is a spiritual movement. It's acting on the platform of the soul. This Hare Krishna chanting, it surpasses all lower platforms of consciousness, sensual consciousness, mental consciousness, intelligence consciousness. It goes straight to the spirit soul, beyond all the coverings of the body. And it gives benefit to the spirit soul. Just like how so many movements nowadays, they give benefit to the material body. There are so many uh, Bill and Gates Melinda foundations,
Oh yes. Oh
which I'm
yes.
sure everyone is familiar with. These $1 billion foundations that they cure polio or so-called or
Cool.
whatever it might be diseases that affect the material body, but they actually don't give any attention to the consciousness. So it's much like trying to save a drowning man by saving his dress, his coat, which is a completely useless endeavor. If someone is drowning and you dive into the water and you try to rescue his coat, if you try to rescue him and you pull out his coat and you bring his coat to the shore, you are not going to meet a great applause. And if you do, the people who applaud you will be fools, because you didn't save the man, you saved his jacket only. So similarly, all these different movements which only address the problems of the body and of the mind, they are only scratching the surface. They don't actually help the person within these coverings. So in one sense, they are useless. They don't address the real problem. So so this chanting of Hare Krishna is the basis and purpose of the Hare Krishna movement, which was introduced in the Western world by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the spiritual master for the Hare Krishna movement. And so this chanting is of paramount importance for the human society because, like I said, it benefits the soul, which is actually what ultimately every person is looking for and every person should do, rather than waste time in adjusting the situation for bodily comforts, which are temporary. We should ask, what am I doing for my soul? Like it says in the Bible, what profiteth a man if he gains the whole world but loseth his eternal soul, right? So these things for the body, they will not stay, and this movement is to address that eternal problem. So it's not that the chanting process, which is the purpose of the movement, is although it appears very simple, and it is ultimately very simple, it is a great science, actually. So, there are certain practices and certain, there are certain regulations around the chanting which make the chanting potent, make the process very effective, very quick for spiritual realization. It's actually the fastest method of spiritual realization, whereas in previous ages, thousands of years ago, people would be able to practice yoga, for example. They would be able to practice these methods of transcendentalism for tens upon tens of thousands of years. So obviously, people barely live even 70 now. Prabhuji was just telling me that people live only 72 now on average, or something like this. Very low life expectancy. Now with COVID, who knows? We don't exactly know if COVID is real, but anyway, it's reducing. Is my point. It's very difficult to practice real yoga as a consequence. We don't have the facilities, the faculties for that anymore. So the Hare Krishna chanting is a condensed version of all the previous ages' spiritual practices. It's very conducive for the current circumstances. But it has to be, it's not a cheap thing at the same time. There's a certain process that is required to chant purely and effectively. So we're just going to a little bit discuss that today. And so the first thing that comes to my mind is that there are, although we might see many people are chanting Hare Krishna and that is good. Some of the how do you say, the pure or the original or the essence of the chanting has been lost in some of the modern instances. So something that we can see widespread is now Hare Krishna chanting is performed with musical instruments. This makes the process more melodic, more attractive for people in general. It satisfies the senses. It makes makes it easy to dance to the chanting, which increases the ecstasy. And it engages the mind, and it keeps the mind on the mantra. So that the instruments are very essential for prolonged chanting, and but sometimes it can get a little bit out of hand. So
Yes.
there are instances we've seen now where people are taking this this chanting and they're a little bit taking it out of hand. And our dear Bhakta Nes Prabhu, he has some experiences in some temples where this is going on. So I just like to invite our Bhakta Nes Prabhu. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about your experience with chanting. Maybe you could even explain to us how you first started chanting a little bit. Give us a little introduction, who you are, introduce yourself a little bit, and then tell us about your experiences with chanting in these various other places.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everyone. So I'm just a useless Shudra from Slovenia.
He's very humble. Back to
Thank you for having me. It's a very, very good opportunity to be speaking here. Well, how did I start chanting? Just by first hearing from Srila Prabhupada. And then when he explained all the different processes from the meditation and all this temple worship and all this, I was like, before I was very, 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 how do I say, very for the very idea of meditation. You know, I was like, oh yeah, we have to meditate, we have to be in silence and so on. But then he gave such a nice example, Srila Prabhupada gave such a nice example that how this one rishi, he had to meditate for 60,000 years to achieve perfection. And I really got to thinking. I was like, yeah, that's true. And then he even wrote, Srila Prabhupada wrote that when you chant, you can actually see yourself spiritually advancing. So I was like, oh, okay, so then I must try. And actually, you can see how very minuscule, but you still get some taste, you know, for the chanting, and you can see how your consciousness changes from the material lusty consciousness to sort of let me do it for Krishna then, in some way or other. So by those instructions, I realized that I should be chanting, and even if I can't chant attentively enough, or even if I can't chant ecstatically or so on, I should still be chanting. So that's how I came to the conclusion.
Okay, that's very nice. If you don't mind, we can just discuss that a little bit, because that's very, so you brought some very interesting points there. And then, because there's a lot of stuff to delve in there, I think, and the other portion that you're going to talk about will also have a lot of, to speak crudely, a lot of meat to it. So let's go a little bit into that. I like this point that you brought up, that you can feel yourself advancing, and that is a sign of the efficacy or the potency of the mantra. That just like, and Prabhupada explains in this connection in his Bhagavad Gita, that when one takes food, if a hungry man takes morsels of food, he begins to feel satisfaction. So
yes.
in the same way, when you chant Hare Krishna, if anyone takes to this process, you can try it at home. It's very, very simple. You don't have to have beads. You don't have to have some gorgeous arrangements. You don't have to You know, I don't know, like do all kinds of crazy finger mudras with your hands. You just chant these 16 syllables. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Very simple. If you chant this, the more you chant it, the more you will find that your mind becomes detached from material engagements. Your senses, your passions become quieted, and you will feel a transcendental satisfaction, a peace of mind. Of course, that is not actually the purpose of chanting. That is simply a byproduct of the chanting. The purpose of the chanting is something much greater. Like back to Nace Prabhu, very nicely, he said, I don't have to chant ecstatically. But what is that ecstasy? Actually, this chanting results in pure love of God or pure love of Krishna. That is the highest ecstasy that the soul can feel. It completes a divine union or connection with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is actually the purpose of chanting Hare Krishna. And the closer that you get to that goal, as a byproduct, you will feel an ever-increasing inner spiritual happiness. So that is one of the evidences that the Hare Krishna process or chanting of Hare Krishna is, how do you say, is true. To speak plainly,
Oh yeah,
it is true.
it's self-evident.
It's self-evident. Thank you. Yeah, and as I'm sure Bhaktivinoda can affirm, you don't feel attracted if you chant this mantra sincerely. You don't feel attracted to material engagements. Devotees of Krishna consciousness, they don't engage in illicit sex. They don't engage in intoxication, gambling, meat eating. They offer all their food to Krishna. They live simple lives. They just chant Hare Krishna. They give up. Usually, of course, it's not a requirement, but generally they're not so inclined to go to movies and cinemas and watch TV. They can perform all kinds of austerities. Why? Because this chanting of Hare Krishna is so gives such a higher pleasure that they're simply concerned with serving Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. So, yeah, this is a nice point you brought, Prabhu. So
Yes, I see it like in a way that if you can have each day a very nice samosa or like a nice halwa lunch, then why would you eat stale bread or just plain rice?
right,
That's fire taste.
right. There's something so much better there.
Yes, and all these main activities of the civilization, they just actually they don't even they first become like unattractive, but then somehow progress. They actually become repulsive. You
Right.
see and realize how useless all of this is, and that nobody needs this. It's just this mind, just this false ego that needs this constant, instant gratification. And but in the sense, it's completely nonsense. You
Right.
don't need it, you know.
Yeah, because it awakens the soul. You begin to see that, well, if I'm not you get the practical realization, if I'm not this body, then why should I enjoy these different bodily pleasures? You get that practical realization. There's a nice,
Exactly.
although it's a high stage, and we shouldn't imitate also, but there is a nice quote by one great acharya one great spiritual teacher in our line of spiritual teachers called Yamanujacharya, and he says that when I think of sex life, my face turns and I spit at the thought. Ever since I've been engaged in the service of Krishna, so of course that's a very high level of purity, but this is the of course, and also result is kind of a gross term, but this is the spiritual result of chanting Hare Krishna and following the process sincerely. You can actually reach a stage where you experience such a fresh, ever-increasing transcendental pleasure that the most high pleasure in the material world, sex life, becomes abominable. So yeah, that's a very good point, Prabhu. Yeah.
Or I would like had the example of Srila Shukadev Goswami.
Ah,
Like when he was at his prime, per se, he was a 16-year-old boy.
hmm.
He could walk around. He would walk around naked, completely naked,
Right.
and he would not feel attracted to even all those girls bathing in the river because he could see the soul. He would not make a distinction on the body.
Right,
And
right.
actually, even the girls said that they do not see him in that way. So of course, he was completely liberated from the. So we're far from that, but that's a very nice example.
Yeah, I like that Leela from the Bhagavatam, that the
Yeah, me
girls,
too.
because
It's
he was
great.
so pure from chanting Hare Krishna, that the girls,
Yes.
they were almost bewildered. He's so innocent.
Mhm.
So they didn't even feel the need to cover themselves because they knew that Shukadev Goswami was not attracted. He was not enjoying uh, the view of them. So it's such a potency, this chanting of Hare Krishna.
Mhm.
But as we should now a little discuss, it does um, sometimes because of some discrepancies in following of in the following of the process, uh,
Mhm.
the taste can be lost. So um, there are practical examples of how this manifests, and how to avoid it is an important subject matter to discuss. So of course, everyone should take to the process, but they should take to the process under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. Um, they
Mhm.
should hear from a pure devotee about how to chant properly. And by knowing the science, then you can reach the perfectional stage very easily. But there are certain potholes in the process, which if you don't take the proper care to avoid, then things can start to go haywire. So anyway, I just wanted to move on to the next point, that sometimes that manifests that um, there can be a relapse and uh, a misplacing of the emphasis on what
Mhm.
is actually
Yes.
important in the chanting. So back to Nace, maybe you could elaborate on what you experienced in these various other temples or places where the chanting of Hare Krishna was going on.
Yes. What everyone can see and what I saw being very prominent today is that somehow the emphasis on the holy name itself has been lost, and the importance has been put on the melody or the tempo or on the show aspect of it all. So how it looks to the watchers, how it feels to the people singing, and so on. Um, but that is very clearly not the point of the Mahamantra. The point is to appease Krishna, to appeal to
Mm.
Krishna. So glorify the Lord by your mantra, by your chanting. Um, so what is being is actually first of all, there's all these different melodies. Now, some of them, I don't know, might be from Vedic tradition, but probably some are not. But either way, it's like this whole mosh pit, hodgepodge thing, like a big crock pot of melodies, and then there's just no consistency. The whole thing is just being constantly changed from one melody to another, like going up and down from the mantra and left and right, and there's just no consistency. So then what happens, at least to me, when I was trying to follow along in those songs, there's this varying amounts of randomness, and then you actually lose the focus. You
Mm.
you stop you stop focusing on the holy name, but you actually start focusing on the melody and how to sing.
Hmm.
You don't sing from the heart. You're actually thinking about how to sing, and that's basically singing from the mind, because
Mm.
you're trying to appeal to the group that is singing and to the players that are playing. So I think that's a very big misfortune. So because obviously the singing should be done, from the heart, like you can hear very very much from Srila Prabhupada or
Mm.
like Vishnu Jan Swami, as we
Mm.
were discussing earlier. That is all from the heart. They didn't even have time to think, oh, I should maybe sing like this, or
So absorbed.
oh, just sing the ecstasy.
Right.
So it seems to me that in that way, when it is done from the, like, this this mixed melody type and this various rhythm and tones and all these different instruments that shouldn't even be anywhere close, uh, the temples and so on.
Hmm.
It loses its potency because it's not very much. It's not so strict anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's yeah, the like you said very nicely, the focus is no longer on the mantra, which actually defeats the entire purpose of chanting, because chanting
Yes.
is a meditation. The mind is
Mm,
meant to fix on the sound vibration Hare Krishna. So
mm,
if you're constantly throwing in very complex musical embellishments, of course, there's nothing wrong with trying to please Krishna with nice music, with nice sounding instruments. But if your intention is to focus on the embellishments and on the different melodies and on harmonizing and trying to make the Maha Mantra sound nicer for
yeah,
people's
exactly.
senses, if you're trying to please the people, then
Yeah,
then it loses the potency. And Krishna doesn't necessarily manifest in such chanting. If you're not chanting to please Krishna, if you're chanting for sense gratification, then why should Krishna appear there? Chanting is offensive. So just like
yes.
actually His Grace Purja Prabhu was mentioning in one of the classes that he was giving on the Srimad Bhagavatam this very morning of this recording, he said, when you're chanting Hare Krishna, are you thinking about Krishna or are you thinking about pleasing some woman? So people, when we're chanting, well, not people, but when anyone is chanting Hare Krishna, they should always be cautious. What am I actually chanting? What is the reason I'm chanting for? What am I focusing on? Um,
Mm,
because it's possible. Two things are possible by chanting Hare Krishna. The first is that you either water this seed of devotional love of Krishna in the heart, and you water it so much by this chanting process that eventually that love reaches its full fructification of purity, and you can actually have a direct personal contact of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. You become qualified to associate personally with God, Krishna himself, by developing this pure chanting. But if you focus on the wrong thing, if you focus on the embellishments to impress the people, to get some woman, to get mundane fame and get your name out there,
mm,
then actually what it does, the chanting actually makes you a demon. Actually, the chanting waters what we call in Sanskrit anatas, or unwanted things, and it makes your
it's-
character very lowly, and you'll never be able to achieve love of Godhead. So this is we have to be very careful to avoid where the emphasis is placed. And
mm,
another point that Bhakti Prabhu mentioned was that yesterday me and Bhakti were also discussing this topic, and we were discussing Vishnujan Swami. So I don't know if everyone who's listening is familiar with Vishnujan Swami or even Srila Prabhupada, but these are two great transcendental personalities and prolific singers and chanters of the Hare Krishna mantra. And the difference is between these kirtans. Kirtan is a word that we use to refer to the not a performance per se, but let's say for convenience sake, the musical performance of Hare Krishna chanting. We perform for Krishna,
mm,
of course, not for money exactly, but these great performers of kirtan, the difference in their chanting compared to a lot of the kirtans that we see today is that chanting is, like Prabhu said very nicely, it's from the heart. You can practically
mm.
taste the ecstasy on Vishnujan's
Yeah,
audio
literally. Yeah.
recordings, because he is, yes, he's chanting for Krishna. He's chanting under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada. So that chanting, it doesn't need great musical embellishments. It doesn't need very complex melodies. Vishnujan in one sense, you could say he is quite simple in his chanting. Simple mridanga, simple melody, but it is manifesting Krishna. It is ecstatic. So yeah, I like this point that you brought up, Aru.
It's sad. Uh,
Sorry,
can see
you're a little cut out there,
today.
maybe.
Okay. How about now?
Now it's good. Now you're crystal clear.
Okay. Okay, nice. Like you said, these kirtans today, you can actually hear this perfect musical composition and all the perfect components and all this very nice Mataji voice singing, the Maha Mantra and all this. But then when you listen to Vishnujan, he's like Hare Krishna. You can just feel it. Like you said, very nice. You can feel his ecstasy. You can feel his love coming through the speakers. It's actually amazing, and that's what gets you up. That's what gets you jumping. Not this very nice, materially nice sounding voice and the music. No, it's the ecstasy. It's the love. It's the spontaneous purity, and that's what really, at least for me, that's what makes me go crazy.
Nice, that's nice. Yeah, it's like we said in the beginning. It's a spiritual. So that spiritual enthusiasm that is manifested, for example, in personalities like Vishnujan Swami, that is, like you say, very nicely. That's actually what gets you spiritually enthusiastic. That's what gets you really dancing. That's what gets the soul dancing. It's not. Of course, you can dance to material sounds, but that dancing is ultimately just a show, and it will never satisfy you, that music. And that is why, like you also mentioned before previously, that the tune is always switching, right? If the tune is always switching, that means it's not satisfying. You have to constantly have varieties, right? So this necessity of switching. Of course, it's nice to have some variety of tunes for Krishna, but the necessity to switch so often is defeated by Srila Prabhupada, who is like I mentioned before, the spiritual master of the Hare Krishna movement. When he first came to the United States to spread these chanting of the holy names, he started chanting in a park in New York under a tree, and he just had a simple bongo drum, and he was just playing a very simple beat, chanting the same Hare Krishna tune, same mantra, same tempo, and same intonation, everything. You can actually find that kirtan on the Bliss Cinemas YouTube channel. It's there. We have almost 1 million views because it's such a transcendentally potent kirtan. And that kirtan went on... sorry?
The classic Srila Prabhupada.
Classic Srila Prabhupada, yeah, exactly. So that kirtan went on for almost 4 hours, and there was a huge crowd assembled, and people were dancing in ecstasy for 4 hours to the same tune over again. So people might say, how are they chanting the same thing? It seems, from a mundane point of view, it seems very repetitive, and monotonous, and like it would become stale, like any other material thing. But because it was pure chanting of the holy names, it doesn't matter that it was apparently the same tune. It is giving a transcendental pleasure. It's beyond the contemplation of the mind. It satisfies the soul. It's the eternal engagement of the soul. So it cannot become dry like that. It can't be compared to anything mundane. There is no saturation point to spiritual pleasure. So yeah, that's very nicely manifested by these personalities, like you mentioned.
So like Srila Prabhupada, he says, the proof is in the pudding. So everyone should try to eat this Maha Mantra, to chant this Maha Mantra. Then you can see, because obviously there are questions like, how can they chant 2 hours, 3 hours? How is that possible? And each day, not only that, each day they chant so much. Then just try it, have a taste, have a bite, and then everyone can see that it is not a mundane sound. Like Srila Prabhupada, he writes, try chanting Coca-Cola and you'll go crazy in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Try chanting Hare Krishna and you'll get the result. You'll see.
You become
That's very
ecstatic.
nice.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is a very nice. This is atheists often argue in epistemological arguments. They they're my little tongue twister there. They argue that you must provide demonstrable evidence that your claim is true, right? So we have very clear demonstrable evidence that you cannot chant. And actually, there's a Prabhu, there's a devotee who lives in Florida, United States. His name is Dhira Govinda Prabhu, and he made an experiment actually, like a scientific psychological experiment. If the chanting of any other vibration, any other sound, like Coca-Cola, if that has anywhere near the same effect as chanting Hare Krishna, and the study showed that people cannot chant these other vibrations at all compared to chanting Hare Krishna, which can go on for ultimately, until the body itself becomes tired. But the spiritual saturation point has no limits, and this was shown practically. And of course, it's shown practically every day if you follow the lives of devotees like Bhaktivinoda Prabhu. They are chanting Hare Krishna every day, like he said, and still there's no tiring. You can chant this Mahamantra 24 hours, and then the next day again 24 hours, and still you won't want to stop chanting. So, in fact, you'll want to chant more and more. So, how is this possible? Because it is transcendental. So there's just one. There were many things I wanted to get to, but it's just this nectar of Krishna Katha has been going on now on these first points a little while. So of course it was very nice, but I just wanted to bring a couple quotes from Srila Prabhupada about this chanting process and what we've been discussing so far. So. In connection with how to chant and how to treat the kirtan, I found a very interesting quote that me and Bhaktivinoda Prabhu were discussing yesterday, actually. This is from Srila Prabhupada's Back to Godhead magazines that he released before he came to the United States. He says there, he quotes a shloka from the Upanishads, Punashya Purnam Adaya Purnam Ede Abhishyate. The Lord therefore can descend before us by his inconceivable mystic powers in the form of sound transcendental. That shloka, by the way, it translates that everything that emanates from the complete, or God, the absolute, everything that emanates from him is also complete. It's not a relative, just like how in the material world, if I chant water, water, it doesn't satisfy my thirst, because the word water is not the same thing as water, the substance. It's not absolute. It's relative. There are two things in the relative world, but in the transcendental world, in the kingdom of God, everything is absolute. So if you say Krishna, the word Krishna is actually God. It is Krishna. So this is the nature of transcendental name. So anyway, Prabhupada continues, in the form of sound transcendental, he descends, and if we like, we can receive him properly by surrender and service, by a submissive oral reception. If Sri Krishna comes himself in our presence as he actually did during the battle of Kurukshetra, or Sri Ramachandra comes himself in our presence as he actually did during the Ayodhya Leela, then what are we expected to do to receive the personality of Godhead? Surely we shall try to receive him with all devotion and services, so that we may be favoured with his grace. Similarly, as his name is non-different from him, we must receive the name with all humility and submissive oral reception, with the same attitude as we had done in the presence of the Lord himself. Sri Krishna Sankirtan is not therefore a sense pleasure of music and songs as are conceived by some mundaners. We should always remember the following shloka in connection with Sri Krishna Sankirtan, namely, Nama Chintanami Krishna Chaitanya Rasi Viragya Purna Sudha Nitya Mukta Avinyatat Nama Namina. The name of Sri Krishna is equally as powerful as Sri Krishna himself, For there is no distinction between him and his name. The name is therefore all perfect, all pure, eternal, distinguished from mundane sounds, which are always different from the objects designated by these sounds. End of quote. So, this is a very cutting and very relevant, of course, always relevant passage from Srila Prabhupada, that the kirtan, the chanting of Hare Krishna, is actually God himself. God is manifesting in this transcendental sound vibration. So to treat it as some kind of going to like, I don't know, like a Guns N' Roses concert, and playing all kinds of wild instruments and treating it as a sense pleasure, it's inappropriate actually, because you're using God as your servant. And although this is the conception of God for many people, that God give us our daily bread, God is our servant. He's for my sense pleasure. And if some atheists also, they argue, I don't believe in God unless he manifests a gold brick before me. If I pray for a gold brick and then a gold brick appears in my doorstep the next day, then I'll believe in God. That is not the process of understanding, or that is not the relationship that we have with Krishna or God. The relationship that we have with Krishna is one of service. So, yes, kirtan especially should not be taken as an excursion, a sense pleasure excursion. It is not for the satisfaction of one's ears or other people's ears. It is for the satisfaction of Krishna. So, I don't know, Prabhu, maybe you have something, maybe you found something else also interesting in this quotation from Srila Prabhupada?
Yes, I love this last fact very much. It is not for the satisfaction of our ears or the ears of the listeners, but for the transcendental ears of Krishna.
Right.
That is perfect. I mean, you cannot describe it better. And I like it also how it is called mundanist. So if we try to see it as a material thing or just like something that we do because we're bored and we just go on the street and just to have fun, it's not that. You can also see like you two glorious devotees, you actually do the Harinam Sankirtan in very bad weather and cold weather and on very unfavorable conditions, but you still do it. Not because you are materially enjoying it, but actually because it is the duty of the devotee.
Right.
So that is also a very nice example.
Yeah, the chanting is a service. It's not for
Yes,
our
it is also
enjoyment.
an austerity.
Right.
It's also an austerity. Like when you do it in, when you do it in bad weather or so on, the chanting still goes on, even though you may be suffering, but it must be done.
Must be done. Yeah, there's a shloka in the Bhagavatam that devotional service or service to Krishna is a haitikiya pratiha, not impeded by anything material, and that is the. Although it may not, there's two kinds of pure chanting. There's Shuddhanam, which means chanting without any material desire in the unconditioned liberated stage. That is chanting in pure love of Godhead. That is very elevated. But there is also pure chanting under the direction of the spiritual master, which means to chant while following his instructions, following the regulative principles of devotional service, rendering service, and other services to the spiritual master. That chanting is also pure chanting because it purifies the heart. So that chanting is to be done, and the pure chanting comes not only through following the regulative principles, but by preaching also. If spreading this wonderful Hare Krishna mantra to others is not done, then the chanting is not pure. If you're a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, as a representative of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his mission and his desire is that his disciples spread the holy name all over the world. So
Mhm.
to chant Hare Krishna under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada means to preach Sri Krishna Sankirtan. And if that is neglected or if that is compromised also, then the potency of the chanting is lost. So, yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Prabhu. I just have some other quotes also to get to. So if you don't have anything else to add, I can move on. But if you'd like to make a
It's just
contribution.
it's just a very nice topic that we should not be chanting, for ourselves.
Hmm.
Of course, I mean, you are the one actually receiving the spiritual advancement, but that is just a result. So I think that is also why we chant out loud, for like Chaitanya and all these very great personalities. They were chanting out loud, and the best representative is Haridas Thakur. How he practically, how loud he chanted, that everyone, why must you chant so loudly?
Right.
He said, it's because you need the mercy. It's for the people, for the plants, for everything to hear.
Yeah, and like it is not just actually for our spiritual advancement. Of course, we should try to advance spiritually, but when you chant out loud, like you just said very nicely, everyone, including the germs, even the little germs that are spread all across your room or in your car or wherever it might be, they are also receiving spiritual advancement because the holy name of Krishna is so potent. It is Krishna himself. It's all purifying. Whoever hears that vibration, they also make progress towards Krishna. So, just imagine how genius this movement of Lord Chaitanya is, that he brought this holy name. Not only is it very easy for everyone to perform, but by doing it, you also benefit all others. You benefit all others on the spiritual platform, whether they like it or not, even if they don't like to chant. If you chant purely, sincerely, then other people will also benefit from this chanting. Therefore, it is the greatest philanthropic movement of all time, because not only does it go directly to the soul, not only does it attend the spiritual platform, but it is universally spreadable. That's a phrase I just made up on the spot for
Yes,
lack of a better term.
effective. Universally effective, of
Universally
course.
effective. That's more precise. Yeah. Nobody can escape. If you go out on the street and chant, everyone,
Instant.
it's instant. Everyone will receive spiritual benefits. So, yeah, it's a nice point. Yeah, this is such a nice thing, and that's that. When everyone receives benefit is when you're chanting purely for Krishna. So, yeah, there are just a couple other points. There are many more, but our time now is limited. The one of the other things that I've noticed, I don't know if you've seen this also, Prabhu, is that many people nowadays are using kirtan as a way to raise money for charitable purposes, which is, I'm sorry to say, a greatly foolish endeavor, because such people are missing the very point of kirtan itself. They are can be likened to people who are trying to water a tree, but are watering the leaves and the branches of a tree, as opposed to watering the root. If you water the leaves and branches of a tree, it is completely useless. In fact, if the sun hits the water, it actually dries up the leaves and branches, right? But if you water the root, then the whole tree is benefited. So similarly, by chanting Hare Krishna, you please Krishna, who is the root of everything. He's the source of all material and spiritual worlds. So if you chant Hare Krishna sincerely, everyone is satisfied. Everyone is benefited on all platforms, material and spiritual. There's no need to separately supply people's material needs. And I don't know if you've ever encountered this, Prabhu, but I've often seen this. But actually, Srila Prabhupada...
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu?
I can think of one person that is doing it, so
Okay.
it must be even more, sadly.
Yes, yeah, it's going on, and it's been going on for some time. And very
Mm,
interestingly, Srila Prabhupada, he actually cites an instance in his own life. Very interesting, where
mm,
this actually was going on in India in the 20th century, and Prabhupada explains the offensive nature of this activity. So anyway, Prabhupada says, I have heard in 1900, 1898. I was born in 1896. So I have heard, I have seen also. I remember in Calcutta there was a very virulent type of plague epidemic in 1898. So Calcutta became devastated. All people practically left Calcutta. Daily, hundreds and hundreds of people were dying. Sorry, were dying. I was 1 year old or 1.5 year old. I have seen what was happening, but there was plague epidemic that I did not know. I later on I heard from my parents. So one Babaji,
mm,
Babaji is a kind of solitary uh, spiritual practitioner. He organized Sankirtan, Hare Krishna Sankirtan, when there was no other way. So he organized Sankirtan all over Calcutta, and in Sankirtan, all people, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, everyone joined, and they were coming. They were going road to road, street to street, entering in every house. So that Mahatma Gandhi Road 151 you have seen, the Sankirtan party we received very nicely. There was light, and I was very small. I was also dancing, I can remember. Just like our small children sometimes dances, I remember. I could see only up to the knees of the persons who were joined. So the plague subsided. This is a fact. Everyone who knows the history of Calcutta, the plague was subsided by the Sankirtan movement. Of course, we do not
yeah,
recommend that Sankirtan should be used for some material purpose. That is Nama Aparada.
mm,
Nama Aparad. Sham Mati Pramana. Sankirtana, you can utilize Sankirtana for some material purpose, but that is not allowed. That is Nama Aparad, because Nama, the holy name of Krishna, and Krishna, they are identical. You cannot utilize Krishna for your personal material benefit. That is aparad. Krishna is the Lord. You cannot engage the Lord for your service. Similarly, you cannot utilize the holy name of the Lord for some material purpose. That is not allowed. So, yeah, this is a super powerful quote.
mm,
That's 2 points I specifically noticed here was that actually Krishna is always fulfilling the desires of everyone. And Krishna is very merciful. He actually did subside the plague that was happening in Kolkata at that time. So by chanting Hare Krishna, of course, it is possible to get these material benefits. But by doing so, you simultaneously lose out on the real highest benefits, which is love of God. If you commit aparads or offenses to the holy name, you can't reach that pure love of Godhead, which everyone is after, and which transcends any kind of disease anyway. Right? If you
mm,
solve one disease, even if they solve COVID now, let's say, another disease will come and take its place. If you
mm,
do philanthropy work to feed poor people, um, there will be more poor people, and those same poor people will go poor again because that is their karma, right? So these things, these material temporary things, even if they can be adjusted, they come and they go. And if you use Hare Krishna chanting to do that, you might temporarily solve some things, but you lose out on the eternal benefits. So what a great loss that is.
yes, and actually you are hurting them actually very much because let's say you use the Hare Krishna Kirtan for some material benefit, you're actually helping them enjoy materially because you
Right.
will see their suffering and then they will enjoy materially. So you're doing yourself and them a very bad favor. It's not so good. It should not be done in that way, of course.
Right. You think you're helping people, but actually
Mm.
you're condemning them more and more.
Yeah, and yourself as well. That's
Right.
not a matter.
It is a
And
lose-lose situation on all sides.
yeah, nobody wins. Maybe
Nobody
for
wins.
maybe it looks like you're doing great, but it's not okay.
Yeah.
Mm. Also on the topic, I would like to point out the third commandment
Hmm.
from Jesus. It
Okay.
says, "Thou shalt not take the name of God in vain."
Ah, okay,
So
nice.
that is very applicable in this case. In vain, it means to just use it for nonsense. So the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra should not be used for nonsense in this way. Like the kirtan should not be charged because it's actually like, okay, you're taking donation for the kirtan, but like you said previously, you are not realizing the fact that the very name itself, it's already curing the poverty, but not from the material, from the spiritual.
not
It is
not curing the
curing.
material hunger, but the spiritual hunger, the real hunger.
Yes, the spiritual hunger is actually increasing. Uh,
Right,
you get getting more hungry for Krishna.
right.
That is that is very,
That is transcendental
very,
hunger.
very soon. Yes, exactly. Like Jesus also said, a man does not only live from bread; he also lives from the word of God.
Nice.
That is his testimony when he was being in the desert, when he was starving for 4 days. He was tempted from the Satan. He said that you don't need bread, you need the word of God. So Hare Krishna.
Very nice. Yeah, Jesus Christ was a great Vaishnava, the greatest
Mhm.
Vaishnava, and he was preaching Sankirtan movement. There are many quotes from the Bible, just like how the mouth should always be filled up with the names of God. I don't exactly know which book that is from, but actually, Puraja Prabhu, he gave a class very recently elaborating on this topic that Jesus Christ actually was a great Vaishnava of Krishna, and he was preaching exactly the same thing that we're preaching. Just for time, place, and circumstance, it may appear slightly different. So, but the essence is the same. So that can also be found on this channel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So that can also be found on this channel, expandthebliss.com. Sorry, on YouTube. So I recommend everyone give that a check out. Anyway, I think that there many more things could be covered and said, but we're getting kind of on the time now. So I thank you very much, dear Bhakta Nace Prabhu, for joining me today on the Bliss Podcast. It was a pleasure to have you and hear your realizations and get so many different varieties of angles of vision. Very nectarian. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you very much for having me.
The pleasure was all Krishna's.
Oh, Krishnas. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Jai. So join us for the next episode of the Bliss Podcast, Chatting with the Hare Krishnas. That will be regularly uploaded, as it has been for the past year, on Mondays. I think we maybe have just approached the year-long anniversary of the podcast. I'm not entirely sure. We have to do maybe a 1 year anniversary special podcast. I'm going to check that myself after this. But for those of you who have been listening to the podcast for its incarnation, its beginning, thank you very much for staying with us the whole time. It's been quite a journey, as they say. We've gone from La Linea, Gibraltar, all the way to London, UK, and yeah, it's been very fun. So we hope to continue this podcast for eternity. Nityam Bhagavata
Yeah.
Sevaya. This continues. This Krishna Katha. It is the activity of the soul. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to specifically thank Harley David Heiser, who's someone who's been a very dear devotee who's been listening to our podcast from the very beginning, and Peter Kirshner Prabhu, also, who's been listening for quite a long time, and he's been supporting us with donations as well as his realizations and questions and vocal supports. Also for a few years now. So there are so many people I'd like to thank. If I was here thanking all of them, I would be here for quite a long time. But thank you to all of those who support us, support this Bliss Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society movement, and yes, please continue to do so. This is the most essential humanitarian work for the whole society in general. I'm gonna put links by which you can support us in the description of this video. We have various donation platforms. Our Patreon is available. If you'd like to subscribe, become our Patreon. You're entitled to various rewards that are very exciting. You can become entitled to ebooks compiled by His Grace Birja Prabhu for a small price commitment per month. Or if you don't like commitment, if that little scares you, you can go to our Just Giving page and give what you can there. No amount is too small, no amount is too big. We also are on all kinds of social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all under the name Expand the Bliss, and I'm going to put the links in the description of this video. So be sure to check those out, including our website, and add Bhakti Nace Prabhu. He's a wonderful devotee. You can add him on Facebook. Ask him questions about the bliss and Krishna consciousness, and I'm sure he's going to give you a comprehensive answer. So once again, thank you, Prabhu, and I hope we can maybe meet again for the Bliss podcast. What do you think, Prabhu?
Absolutely.
Jai.
We should expand the bliss.
Haribol.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Oh, goddess.